New York Fashion Week began when Charles Worth, a fashion designer, decided to show his collections on living, breathing models. This was the first time it had been done, and it was a big deal, and everyone talked about it. And his idea of doing this started the trend of having what the French called fashion fêtes, which fêtes in French means party. So people would gather for a certain designer, and they would have essentially a party where some of the women would be wearing the designer's collections. These fashion fêtes, the designers who participated in them, became kind of a high society French fashion club, which they called Chambre Syndicale. Now, if you were a member of Chambre Syndicale, you had to have new collections for fall and summer, and you had to have a certain amount of pieces in each collection, and you had to have a fashion fête. And basically there were just lots of guidelines that you had to follow to be considered part of Chambre Syndicale. Now, during World War II, it was very difficult to get to France and home from France, so they canceled all of the festivities that were supposed to be happening, and New York, someone who I didn't write their name down, but I need to figure out who that was, decided to invite everyone who would normally go to France for their fashion week to New York, and they would host it in New York that year. And that really got the ball rolling on New York Fashion Week, and it evolved into what it is today. And right from the first time that they held Fashion Week in New York, it was extremely successful, and it was a way for photographers, models, designers, and basically everyone to go someplace new that wasn't France and kind of take a break from all the stresses that World War II brought. Obviously, it's been extremely successful, and it impacts New York and New York's people a lot. So nowadays, every year, New York Fashion Week brings on average $770 million into the city's economy. This is divided in between two shows because there is two different fashion weeks a year, one for the fall and one for the spring. So surprisingly, just a little fun fact, New York Fashion Week is bigger, it's more nationally talked about, and it brings in more money than the Super Bowl. So it's now held in the Lincoln Center, which it used to be held in Bryant Park with the infamous white tents, but people started to feel like it was a little bit too informal, so they moved it to the Lincoln Center. And that brought a lot more expenses to New York Fashion Week. There's a lot of taxes for obviously purchasing clothes, but also renting spaces and everything. Salaries, there's so many people behind the scenes at New York Fashion Week. There are fashion designers, security guards, hairstylists, makeup artists, assistants, just anyone that you could think of, photographers, people who are there to work, and journalists, editors of fashion magazines. So their salaries take up a lot of money. Also, resources that people have to put in. The materials for clothes, lights, music, makeup, hair, everything. They have to have food and water for models, and gift bags for guests, and nail polish, everything. So when the economy is bad, it also tends to affect New York Fashion Week. So in 2008, New York Fashion Week was considerably less extravagant, and people started focusing more on the clothes. And instead of being a type of thing where New York Fashion Week was for the elite and very unreachable to average Americans, it started to become something where people would brag about what type of deal they got on an outfit instead of how much they spent. Michael Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York of New York, was and still is extremely involved in New York Fashion Week and really believed that it was a huge part of the city and that it helps New York so much every year. And he says that it brings, lots of jobs to the city, lots of tourism to the city, lots of money to the city. And so he is very instrumental in the building of the new home of New York Fashion Week, which I do not have written down here. Okay. On the social aspect of things, New York Fashion Week has a big impact on tourism. So New York Fashion Week causes a lot of people to move to New York and also to visit New York. On the tourism side, people don't come to New York and just go to New York Fashion Week and don't do anything else. They tend to go to the Lower East Side, Chelsea Market, the public library, bars, restaurants, Bryant Park, and so they spend money in all those places, and then that contributes even more to the economy, not to mention their accommodations and their travel. And then people who move to New York, a lot of people move to New York for the fashion, even though they don't work in fashion. So, like doctors, scientists, anyone who likes fashion but doesn't work in the field can move to New York and be surrounded by the hustle and bustle that New York Fashion Week brings. But they end up bringing, the cutting edge in whatever their field is. So it creates a community where everyone's the best of the best. So parties, like after parties for New York Fashion Week, are also extremely important. They're actually sometimes more important than the show itself. The party has the ability to make or break a show, including who attends the party, what's happening at the party, if something disastrous happens, if it's a good party. So, for example, a few years ago, Alexander Wang had a normal fashion show and it was fine, but there wasn't too much buzz about it. And then he had a sort of, not secret after party, but it was very exclusive. And at that after party, Miley Cyrus wore an extremely scandalous outfit, and it became a huge buzz on social media. And everyone was talking about Miley Cyrus at Alexander Wang's after party. And then that led to more buzz about Alexander Wang and more talk of his collection. Also, in the social realm of things, social media. So, social media has changed and revolutionized the way New York Fashion Week works. Hashtags are used for everything, including parties. Like, celebrities can hashtag a party so everyone knows where they are right away. And you can hashtag different brands, you can tweet at brands, and it's all very, I don't know what it is. So throughout New York Fashion Week's history, reaching people, well, especially since 2008, reaching people online has become very important. So, like ads on sides of web pages, junk emails, just lots of news articles like on Huffington Post and New York Times and everything. It's become extremely important, and social approval of each individual brand has, become important because it's, again, more about, the average people, how many people are wearing a designer's collection instead of, who's wearing it. So, for example, there are websites like Polyvore, which are kind of a fashion blogging website. And during New York Fashion Week, people immediately upload pictures and then people immediately talk about it. So right away, designers get feedback. They don't have to wait for it to be published in a paper or anything and then, have reviews come out. Right away, they could go online and look at comments of people being like, oh my goodness, love this, would totally wear this all the time. Or, like, who would ever wear this? This is the ugliest garment I've ever seen. So another part of this is making high fashion wearable and affordable. So a lot of, there are definitely some designers, especially, old school designers that have the very avant-garde feel to all of their designs, but you're seeing more and more, especially with new and upcoming designers, that most of their clothes, while they may be a little exaggerated on the runway, are, they could be worn in everyday life, and, normal people could afford them. So, this reminds me of a quote from The Devil Wears Prada, where Miranda Lambert, who is strikingly similar to Anna Wintour, who is the editor-in-chief at Vogue, explains that fashion trends trickle down through, they start on the runway, and then they go to, the stores of designers, and then, lower stores will pick them up until eventually they end up in, like a TJ Maxx or some other discount store. A lot of people are starting to take advantage of all of the hustle and bustle of New York Fashion Week when it comes to charity. For example, the Clintons, Bill and Hillary, a few years ago set up this giant pink inflatable elephant. And they, people were taking pictures and talking about it and whatever, and it was actually to raise awareness for the poaching of elephants for their tusks. So, and John Baptista, who is a colleague, or I don't know what you call it, something of Michael Bloomberg, said that since New York Fashion Week can cause so much buzz about fashion, why can't it do the same for charity and raising awareness for, good causes? Okay, so New York Fashion Week to most people seems like a very, very extravagant, very glitzy and glam, and everyone who's in the fashion world are perfect people, and, they wake up looking like they could walk down the runway. But when you take a look behind the glitz, you'll find that the work of people in New York Fashion Week is crazy, and they put so much time and work and effort into a fashion show that only lasts for like 10 minutes. So for models, they have fittings for their clothes and walk-ins, and fittings and walk-ins can last up until midnight the night before a show, with the designer tweaking and changing their outfits and putting them in different order and practicing their walk and everything. And their rest time is pretty minimal because they have to get to venues early to get hair and makeup done, obviously. And, a lot of models have one show in the morning and then one show an hour later, and they have to get all the way across New York to do that, so it's not like they have time to rest in between shows. And their entire life for a week is sitting still in a chair and having, someone that they don't really know pull at their hair and put eyelashes on, and, they just end up this like ball of makeup and hairspray. And all of this for a fashion show that only lasts a few minutes. Usually they are running late anyways, and assistants and designers and everyone who works behind the stage are multitasking, so models have to be on top of their stuff to make sure they're ready. And for assistants and designers, it's extremely stressful because they have to make sure that every detail is set up. And also, New York Fashion Week is expensive for designers. They have to hire security, models, lights, music, and, everything. So, it's, and this is all for, again, like 5-10 minutes. So New York Fashion Week has obviously had a huge past in fashion weeks in general. But now it's coming into a new era, like I've explained throughout this presentation, where, again, it's about how many people are wearing your clothes instead of who's wearing your clothes. And, a lot of people are, or a lot of designers are trying to evoke emotions through their clothes, and, trying to make the average person say, I want to wear this designer's clothes. And I have another quote from someone who, I don't know what it is. So a big movement in New York Fashion Week and the fashion world in general is that models are too young and too skinny and not realistic for the everyday American. So there's a big movement to have real women be fashion models, and one designer, Hammer, she has started a trend of, instead of using runway models, she uses role models for her clothes. So she has, important women in business world, an important doctor, a housemaker, anyone who could be considered a role model, and she has them come and model her clothes. And she said that she hopes that other designers take her idea and it becomes, the new norm. Apart from that, New York Fashion Week is, again, like I previously mentioned, Michael Bloomberg is making a new home for it. So it will move from the Lincoln Center to a place that I do not have the name written down. And another new trend in New York Fashion Week is up-and-coming designers who didn't necessarily get into New York Fashion Week. They have shows in, different, like they would rent out like a studio apartment or something, and they have different shows there that are not considered part of New York Fashion Week, but they're, at the same place at the same time.